Dr. Elena Vasquez had always been drawn to dangerous places. The Xenobiology Research Station on Cathera 7 was no exception. The planet's violent storms and unpredictable wildlife made it a posting most scientists avoided, but Elena thrived in the chaos. She had spent 3 years cataloging the indigenous species, and today's expedition to the Crimson Valley was supposed to be routine. The storm hit without warning. One moment Elena was collecting water samples from the rushing river. The next she was fighting against winds that could tear a human apart. Her portable shelter had been ripped away, and her communication equipment lay shattered against the rocks. The normally calm tributary had transformed into a raging torrent of red-tinged water that carved new channels through the valley floor. Through the howling wind, Elena heard something that made her blood freeze. It was a sound she had never heard before, high-pitched and desperate. A cry for help that transcended species barriers. She followed the sound, struggling against the storm, until she reached the swollen riverbank. There, caught in a tangle of debris and fighting desperately against the current, was a creature Elena had only seen from a distance. The locals called them shadow panthers, though they bore little resemblance to Earth's big cats. This one was small, obviously young, with midnight black fur that seemed to absorb light and 6 powerful legs that were failing to find purchase on the slippery rocks. The cub's large, intelligent amber eyes met Elena's, and she saw something that stopped her heart. Fear, yes, but also a desperate plea for help that needed no translation. The creature was drowning, and its strength was failing fast. Elena knew the stories about shadow panthers. They were apex predators, capable of tearing through reinforced steel with their crystalline claws. Adult panthers had been known to hunt in coordinated packs that could take down creatures 10 times their size. The research station's protocols were clear about maintaining distance from any panther, regardless of age or apparent distress. But as Elena watched the cub's head slip beneath the churning water for the 3rd time, protocol became irrelevant. She had become a xenobiologist because she believed in the value of all life, no matter how alien. She couldn't stand by and watch a sentient creature die when she had the power to help. Without hesitation, Elena plunged into the icy water. The current immediately tried to claim her, pulling her downstream toward the jagged rocks that had claimed so much debris. She fought against it, using every technique she had learned during her mandatory survival training. The water was so cold it felt like knives against her skin, and the strange minerals gave it an oily consistency that made swimming nearly impossible. The cub had gone under again by the time Elena reached the debris pile. She took a deep breath and dove beneath the surface, her hands searching desperately through the tangle of broken branches and metal fragments. Her lungs burned, and the current kept trying to pin her against the sharp edges, but she refused to give up. Her fingers finally found something soft and warm. The cub was trapped beneath a fallen tree trunk, its 6 legs tangled in what looked like old surveying equipment. Elena's oxygen was running out, but she managed to work the creature free, wrapping her arms around its surprisingly dense body. Breaking the surface, Elena gasped for air and immediately began swimming toward shore. The cub was unconscious but still breathing, its chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow breaths. Elena had never been this close to a shadow panther before, and even in her exhausted state she marveled at the creature's alien beauty. Its fur was not simply black but seemed to contain depths of color that shifted like oil on water. Crystalline nodules along its spine pulsed with a faint blue light, and its 6 legs ended in retractable claws that looked like living diamonds. The shore seemed impossibly far away, and Elena's strength was failing. The cold water had sapped her energy, and the cub's weight was dragging them both down. She could feel hypothermia setting in, her movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. The rational part of her mind whispered that she should let go, save herself. But Elena had never been good at listening to the rational part of her mind. As they approached the shore, Elena felt a moment of triumph. They were going to make it. The cub stirred in her arms, its amber eyes opening briefly to meet hers. In that moment, Elena felt a connection she had never experienced before, a sense of understanding that transcended the barriers between their species. Then the hidden rocks claimed her. Elena felt the crushing impact against her spine, heard the sickening crack that meant her back was broken. Pain exploded through her nervous system, but her grip on the cub never loosened. With her last reserves of strength, she managed to push the creature toward the muddy bank, watching as it crawled to safety on unsteady legs. As Elena sank beneath the water for the final time, She felt no regret. She had saved a life, preserved something beautiful and unique in a universe that seemed determined to destroy such things. The cub stood on the shore watching her with those ancient amber eyes, and Elena smiled as the darkness closed in. She never saw the massive shadows that emerged from the forest around the young panther. She never witnessed the adult panthers as they plunged into the water, their powerful forms cutting through the current like living torpedoes. She was unconscious when they pulled her broken body from the river, their crystalline claws surprisingly gentle as they lifted her onto the shore. Elena Vasquez had saved the life of a shadow panther cub, never knowing that she had just changed the course of human history on Cathera 7. The pack's gratitude would prove to be something beyond her wildest imagination, something that would challenge everything humans thought they knew about intelligence, loyalty, and the bonds that could form between utterly different species. The storm began to clear as the panthers carried Elena's broken body deeper into their territory, following paths no human had ever seen. Behind them, the cub limped along on unsteady legs, its amber eyes never leaving the face of the human who had given everything to save its life. Elena awakened to a world of impossible sensations. Her first awareness was of warmth, a deep, penetrating heat that seemed to flow through her very bones. The second was the absence of pain. She should have been screaming in agony, her broken spine sending fire through her nervous system, but instead she felt nothing but a strange, tingling numbness. She opened her eyes to find herself in a cavern unlike anything in the geological surveys of Cathera 7. The walls were smooth and curved, covered in a substance that looked like living crystal. Soft bioluminescent formations provided gentle light, casting everything in shades of blue and violet. The air itself seemed to shimmer with some kind of energy, and Elena could taste something metallic and electric on her tongue. Around her, the shadow panthers waited. There were 7 of them, ranging in size from the cub she had saved to massive adults that stood nearly 4 feet at the shoulder. Their 6 legs gave them an alien grace as they moved, and their crystalline spines pulsed with synchronized patterns of light. Elena should have been terrified. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she found herself fascinated instead. The largest panther, its fur bearing silver markings that suggested great age, approached slowly. Elena noticed that its movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. It stopped just beyond her reach and began to make sounds she had never heard before. Not the roars or snarls she might have expected, but something that resembled music more than animal communication. The other panthers joined in, creating a complex harmony that seemed to resonate in Elena's chest. She realized with growing amazement that this was language, sophisticated and nuanced in ways human xenolinguists had never suspected. The shadow panthers were not just intelligent predators, they were a civilization. As the musical conversation continued, Elena became aware of changes in her body. The numbness was fading, replaced by a strange vitality that seemed impossible given her injuries. She tried to move her legs experimentally and gasped when they responded. Her spine, which should have been shattered beyond repair, felt strong and flexible. The silver-marked panther noticed her movement and approached closer. Elena remained perfectly still as the creature extended its head toward her, amber eyes studying her face with unmistakable intelligence. When it spoke, Elena nearly cried out in shock. The words formed directly in her mind, not heard but understood at some fundamental level. Human who saves. You live because we choose life for you. Your broken form has been mended by the old ways, the crystal songs that sing strength into bone and flesh. Elena's scientific mind reeled. The panthers possessed not just language and intelligence, but some form of biotechnology that could repair catastrophic injuries. The crystalline formations in the cave were not just decorative. They were medical equipment of a sophistication that made human technology look primitive. How? She whispered, her voice hoarse from the river water she had inhaled. The panther's response carried overtones of amusement. You ask how the storm makes rain, how the sun gives warmth. These are the gifts of the deep places, the inheritance of the first pack. Your kind has walked this world for small years and seen only the surface of things. Another panther, smaller but bearing the same silver markings, approached from Elena's other side. Its mental voice was different, carrying a distinctly feminine quality. She saved Small Seeker without thought for her own survival. The debt bond is formed and cannot be broken. She is pack friend now, whether she understands or not. Elena looked toward the cub she had pulled from the river. It was larger now, already showing signs of rapid growth that seemed impossible by human standards. The young panther met her gaze and she felt a surge of emotion that was definitely not her own. Gratitude, affection, and something deeper. A connection that felt like family. "Small Seeker is my descendant of the heart, not the blood," the silver-marked female explained. "His birth pack was taken by the Sky-Fire 3 seasons past. I claimed him as my own, as is the way of our people. When he nearly joined the ancestors in the rushing water, part of my spirit would have died with him." Elena struggled to process the implications. These creatures had family structures, adoption customs, spiritual beliefs. Everything she thought she knew about Cathera 7's ecosystem was wrong. The shadow panthers were not just another species to be cataloged and studied. They were people. "Your research station," the male panther continued. "We have watched it since the first metal nest was built. Your kind studies us as you study the wind singers and the stone crawlers, thinking us beasts that follow only hunger and instinct. This amused us, so we allowed the watching to continue." The casual revelation that the panthers had been aware of human observation all along sent a chill down Elena's spine. How much did they know? How long had they been studying humanity in return? "But you, Elena, who saves cubs, you have shown us something new. Your kind is capable of the greatest virtue we recognize, self-sacrifice for another, even one not of your own blood or species. This changes much between our peoples." Elena found her voice, though her throat felt tight with emotion. "What happens now? Will you let me return to my station?" The panthers exchanged a complex series of musical communications before the male responded. "You may choose your path, pack friend. Return to your metal nest and speak of this as you will. Few will believe, and that is as it should be for now. But know this, the debt bond is eternal. When your people have need, Small Seeker and his descendants will remember. When our people have need, we will call upon the honor of Elena who saves." Elena sat up slowly, marveling at her restored mobility. "You could change everything. If humans knew what you were capable of, the medical advances alone—" "Knowledge must be earned," the female panther replied. "Your species is young and often cruel. They would seek to cage us, to take the crystal songs for themselves without understanding their cost. Perhaps one day, when your people have grown in wisdom as well as years, there can be true partnership between our kinds." As if summoned by some invisible signal, Small Seeker approached Elena. The cub was nearly half-grown now, the accelerated healing having triggered rapid development. It touched its crystalline nose to Elena's hand, and she felt a flood of images and emotions that brought tears to her eyes. The pack's history stretching back millennia. Cities of crystal hidden in the deep caves where panther scholars studied the stars and composed songs that could reshape matter itself. The gradual retreat from the surface as other species proved hostile or unworthy of trust. The long loneliness of a civilization that had chosen isolation over the risk of betrayal. And now, because of one human's moment of selfless courage, the possibility of something new. "Small Seeker will watch for you," the male panther said as Elena prepared to leave the healing cavern. "Should danger threaten, sing his name to the wind. The pack's memory is long and our gratitude longer still." Elena emerged from the cave system to find herself miles from the research station. The storm long passed and the twin suns of Cathera 7 setting over the Crimson Valley. She began the long walk home, knowing that her life had changed forever. In her pocket she carried a small crystalline fragment, a gift from Small Seeker that pulsed with gentle warmth. She had no idea that this was only the beginning, that the debt bond she had unknowingly formed would soon reshape the destiny of both their species. 2 years passed before Elena understood the true magnitude of what had happened in that crystal cavern. She had returned to the research station with a carefully crafted story about surviving the storm in a natural cave. Her miraculous recovery explained by emergency medical nanites from her survival kit. The station commander had been suspicious but ultimately accepted her account, filing it away as another example of human resilience in extreme conditions. Elena threw herself into her research with renewed passion, but her focus had shifted dramatically. Instead of cataloging simple behavioral patterns, she began mapping the complex social structures that governed Shadow Panther territory. She discovered hunting grounds that had been maintained for centuries, migration patterns that suggested long-term environmental planning, and communication networks that spanned entire continents. The other researchers thought she had developed an unhealthy obsession. Dr. Chen, The station's behavioral specialist, worried that Elena's near-death experience had left her prone to anthropomorphizing the local wildlife. But Elena kept her discoveries to herself, knowing that premature revelation would only lead to exploitation of the panther civilization she had sworn to protect. The crystalline fragment Small Seeker had given her proved to be more than a simple keepsake. It resonated with subtle vibrations that Elena gradually learned to interpret as a form of long-range communication. Through it, she received updates about the pack's movements and occasional glimpses into their hidden society. She learned that the Panthers maintained vast underground cities connected by tunnels that honeycombed the planet's crust. Their technology was based on biological manipulation rather than mechanical engineering, allowing them to grow tools and structures from modified organisms. Most remarkably, Elena discovered that the Shadow Panthers were not native to Kythera 7. They were refugees from a species-wide diaspora that had scattered their people across dozens of worlds, fleeing from an ancient enemy they referred to only as the Silence. Each pack carried fragments of their original culture, preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost forever. The revelation changed Elena's understanding of her role. She was not just a xenobiologist studying an interesting species. She was humanity's first contact with a civilization that predated human spaceflight by millennia. The responsibility was overwhelming, but she embraced it as the logical extension of her original commitment to preserving alien life. Everything changed when the Terran colonial authority decided to expand mining operations on Kythera 7. The message arrived on a routine supply shuttle, buried among dozens of other administrative updates. The TCA had detected significant mineral deposits in the Crimson Valley region, including rare earth elements essential for faster-than-light drive systems. A full-scale mining operation would begin within 6 months, requiring the relocation of the research station and the establishment of a permanent industrial base. Elena felt sick as she read the technical specifications. The mining operation would devastate thousands of square kilometers, stripping away the surface layers to reach the valuable deposits below. But worse than the environmental damage would be the inevitable discovery of the Panther tunnel systems. Once corporate Earth learned about the underground cities, the Shadow Panthers would become specimens to be studied, caged, and ultimately exploited. She tried the official channels first, submitting reports about the unique ecosystem that would be destroyed by large-scale mining. Her requests for environmental impact studies were denied, her suggestions for alternative sites dismissed as economically unfeasible. The TCA had made its decision based on profit margins and shipping costs, not biological diversity. With 6 months until the miners arrived, Elena began preparing for what she knew would be the most important communication of her life. Using the crystalline fragment as a focus, she reached out to Small Seeker and the pack, sharing images and concepts that conveyed the scale of the coming threat. The response was swift and unmistakable. The Panthers already knew about the human plans, having intercepted and decoded the radio transmissions. Between the station and Earth, we have faced this choice before, came the mental voice of the silver-marked pack leader Elena remembered from the healing cavern. On 7 worlds we have watched our sanctuaries discovered and destroyed by species too young to understand what they consumed. Each time we chose retreat over revelation, silence over struggle. But Small Seeker speaks for change. He says that humans are different, that your sacrifice proves some among you can be trusted with great responsibilities. Elena found herself transported once again to the Crystal Caves, this time through the strange, dreamlike communication the Panthers used for important discussions. She stood in what could only be described as a war council, surrounded by representatives from packs across the entire planet. The debate was conducted in harmonious music that conveyed meaning beyond simple words, arguments layered with emotional undertones and historical references that painted a picture of a species that had survived by avoiding exactly this kind of confrontation. The young ones grow restless, added another voice, this one carrying the weight of immense age. They say we have hidden long enough that it is time to reveal ourselves and claim our rightful place among the star-traveling peoples. They look to Small Seeker's human and see hope where we see only the potential for enslavement. Elena realized that her rescue of one drowning cub had inadvertently triggered a philosophical revolution among the Shadow Panthers. The younger generation saw her sacrifice as proof that interspecies cooperation was possible, while the elders viewed it as a dangerous anomaly that threatened their carefully maintained secrecy. "What do you need from me?" Elena asked, addressing the council as a whole. "I can try to delay the mining operation, but the TCA doesn't listen to xenobiologists. I need help understanding your technology, your capabilities. If we're going to find a peaceful solution, I need to know what resources we can bring to bear." The response came not in words, but in a flood of images and sensations that left Elena gasping. She saw the true extent of Panther civilization spread across the galaxy. Hidden cities on dozens of worlds connected by hyperspace networks that put human FTL technology to shame. She witnessed their biotechnology in action. Organisms capable of breaking down matter at the molecular level and rebuilding it according to precise specifications. Most incredibly, she experienced their approach to warfare. Combat techniques that relied on quantum manipulation rather than brute force. "We are not helpless," Elena, who saves, the pack leader, explained gently. "But power unused for millennia becomes difficult to wield without consequence. We have grown comfortable in our hiding places, content to watch younger species make the same mistakes we made in our aggressive youth. Small Seeker asks us to remember what we once were, to risk everything we have built for the chance of genuine partnership." Elena understood the magnitude of what was being proposed. The Shadow Panthers possessed technology that could revolutionize human civilization, but they were offering something far more valuable than mere scientific advancement. They were offering friendship between species, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than domination. "The debt bond works both ways," Small Seeker interjected, his mental voice now carrying the deeper tones of approaching maturity. "You saved my life without thought of reward. Now it is time for my people to save yours from the isolation that will ultimately destroy them. But the choice must be freely made by both sides." Elena felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. She was being asked to speak for all humanity in negotiations that would determine whether humans would join a galactic community or remain alone among the stars. The responsibility was terrifying, but she thought of the young panther's desperate amber eyes in the rushing water and knew her choice had been made long ago. "Then let's build something new together," she said, her voice carrying across dimensions to touch the hearts of an ancient civilization. "Let's show both our species that trust is stronger than fear." The panther's harmonious response resonated through the quantum channels that connected their scattered peoples, carrying Elena's words to hidden cities on dozens of worlds. For the first time in millennia, the Shadow Panthers began to consider coming out of hiding. The first sign that everything had changed came 3 months before the mining fleet was scheduled to arrive. Elena was conducting her morning observations from the research station's observation deck when she noticed movement in the Crimson Valley that defied explanation. Massive structures were rising from the earth itself, crystalline spires that grew like living things, reaching toward the dawn sky with organic grace. Dr. Chen found Elena staring through the station's most powerful telescopes, her face pale with shock. "Elena, what are those formations?"
"They weren't there yesterday, I'm certain of it."
"The geological surveys never mentioned anything like this." Elena's mind raced as she watched the impossible architecture continue to grow. The Panthers had made their decision. After millennia of hiding, they were revealing themselves in the most dramatic way possible. "I think," Elena said carefully, "we're about to make first contact." Within hours, the communication channels between the research station and Earth were buzzing with frantic activity. Satellite images confirmed what Elena had witnessed. Structures of clearly artificial origin were appearing across the planet's surface, emerging from underground complexes that had somehow remained hidden from orbital surveys. The formations were beautiful but unmistakably alien, incorporating design principles that human engineers couldn't begin to understand. The station commander, Colonel Martinez, called an emergency meeting. His weathered face showed the strain of a career military officer, suddenly confronted with a situation far beyond his training. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we've stumbled into the scientific discovery of the century. Preliminary analysis suggests these structures are the product of an advanced intelligence that has been living beneath our feet for years." Elena listened to her colleagues' excited speculation with growing anxiety. Dr. Chen proposed immediate expeditions to study the formations. The geology team wanted to analyze the crystalline composition. The communications specialist was already preparing first contact protocols based on outdated xenolinguistic theories. We need to be extremely careful, Elena interjected, drawing surprised looks from around the table. We don't know anything about these beings' motivations or capabilities. A hasty approach could be interpreted as hostility. Colonel Martinez nodded gravely. Dr. Vasquez is right. I've already contacted Earth Command, and they're dispatching a full diplomatic team along with military backup. Our orders are to maintain observation distance and avoid any actions that might be seen as provocative. Elena felt her heart sink. Military backup meant warships, and warships meant the colonial authority was already thinking in terms of threat assessment rather than peaceful contact. She had to find a way to establish communication before trigger-happy admirals turned first contact into first conflict. That evening, Elena slipped away from the station and made her way to the valley where she had first encountered Small Seeker. The crystalline fragment in her pocket had been growing warm for hours, and she suspected the panthers were trying to reach her. As she approached the area where the largest spire had emerged, the fragment began to pulse with rhythmic light. Small Seeker emerged from the crystal formation's base with the fluid grace she remembered, but he was no longer the small cub she had pulled from the river. He had grown into a magnificent specimen of his species, his midnight fur marked with silver patterns that indicated high status within panther society. His 6 legs carried him with predatory confidence, and his crystalline spine blazed with bioluminescent displays that spoke of complex emotions. Elena who saves, his mental voice carried warmth and gratitude, but also urgency. The time of hiding ends today. My people emerge because the debt bond demands truth between allies, but your kind responds with fear and weapons. This troubles the elders greatly. Elena approached slowly, her hands visible and empty. My people are afraid because we've never encountered anything like your civilization. They don't understand that you're offering partnership rather than conquest. I need to help them see what I've learned about your people. Small Seeker's amber eyes studied her face with the intelligence she remembered from their first meeting. The pack leaders debate even now. Some say humans are too primitive for the knowledge we offer, too quick to assume hostility where none exists. Others believe your species shows promise, that your individual capacity for sacrifice might extend to your governments as well. Behind Small Seeker, more panthers began emerging from the crystal spire. Elena recognized some from her healing in the caves, but others were strangers whose bearing suggested they came from distant packs. Their coordinated movements and synchronized communications spoke of careful planning and vast resources being deployed. We have 3 days before the first human warships arrive, Small Seeker continued. 3 days to prove that trust can bridge the gap between starfaring peoples, or to confirm that isolation was the wiser choice. The burden falls upon both of us, pack friend. You must speak for humanity's better nature, while we demonstrate that our power serves preservation rather than destruction. The next 3 days transformed Elena's understanding of diplomatic complexity. She found herself serving as humanity's unofficial ambassador to a civilization that operated according to principles human political theory couldn't even address. The Panthers didn't have governments in any sense humans would recognize. Instead, they functioned as an extended family network spanning multiple worlds, with decisions made through emotional consensus rather than formal voting. The crystalline spires continued to grow, revealing themselves as multidimensional structures that existed partially outside normal space-time. Inside them, Elena witnessed technology that seemed like magic even to her trained scientific mind. Organic computers that processed quantum information, transportation systems that folded space around travelers, and manufacturing processes that assembled matter from pure energy patterns. But the most impressive demonstration came when the Panther city builders began addressing Cathera 7's environmental problems. Mining scars from previous operations vanished overnight, replaced by carefully balanced ecosystems that incorporated both native species and Panther biotechnology. Atmospheric processors invisible to human sensors began optimizing air composition for maximum biological diversity. The planet itself seemed to come alive under their care. Colonel Martinez watched these transformations through orbital surveillance with growing unease. Elena, I need to understand what we're dealing with here. These beings have technology that could reshape entire worlds, and they've been hiding it from us for years. How do we know they're not planning to use it against us? Elena struggled to explain the Panther worldview to minds shaped by human concepts of territorial competition and resource scarcity. Colonel, they don't think like we do. They've had this technology for millennia, but they use it to heal rather than conquer. If they wanted to harm us, we would never have detected their presence in the first place. The arrival of the Earth fleet brought Elena's diplomatic efforts to a crisis point. Admiral Harrison, the fleet commander, was a veteran of the Centauri border conflicts who viewed any unknown civilization as a potential threat to human expansion. His ships took position around Cathera 7 with weapons powered but not targeted, a show of force intended to demonstrate human military capability. The Panther's response was swift and unmistakable. Every crystalline spire on the planet began resonating in harmony, creating gravitational waves that caused the human warships to vibrate like tuning forks. No damage was done, no weapons were fired, but the message was clear. The Shadow Panthers possessed forces that could neutralize human military technology without effort. They're not trying to threaten us, Elena explained to the hastily convened diplomatic team. This is their way of demonstrating that military posturing is pointless. They want to negotiate from a position of mutual respect rather than implied threat. Admiral Harrison's weathered face showed the strain of a lifetime. Soldiers suddenly confronted with the inadequacy of military solutions. Dr. Vasquez, these beings have capabilities we can't even measure. How do we protect humanity's interests when conventional deterrence is impossible? Elena looked out at the crystal spires reaching toward the stars. Monuments to a civilization that had chosen preservation over conquest, healing over destruction. Admiral, I think the question isn't how we protect ourselves from them. It's how we prove ourselves worthy of what they're offering. The formal first contact ceremony was scheduled for the following day, with representatives from both species gathering in the Crimson Valley, where a young human scientist had once risked everything to save a drowning panther cub. Elena stood between two worlds, knowing that the choices made in the next few hours would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community or remained forever isolated among the stars. The formal first contact ceremony took place in a natural amphitheater formed by the crystalline spires, where morning light refracted through the alien architecture to paint everything in rainbow colors. Elena stood beside Admiral Harrison and the diplomatic team, watching as representatives from Panther packs across the galaxy gathered for this historic moment. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. The Panthers had chosen their representatives carefully. Each delegation bore the silver markings of elder status, but Elena noticed that Small Seeker stood among them despite his relative youth. His presence spoke to the debt bond's significance in Panther society, the rescue that had opened the door to this unprecedented gathering. Ambassador Chen, Earth's most experienced xenodiplomat, stepped forward with the rigid formality that characterized human first contact protocols. Elena winced as she watched him activate the translation matrix, knowing it would be inadequate for the musical complexity of Panther communication. The Panther's response to his opening statement was politely tolerant, but Elena could sense their amusement at humanity's mechanical approach to language. Honored beings, Ambassador Chen began, his words echoing through the valley. We come in peace, representing the unified government of Earth and its colonies. We seek mutual understanding and beneficial cooperation between our peoples. The lead Panther representative, an ancient female whose silver markings covered nearly her entire body, approached with fluid grace. When she spoke, her words bypassed the translation system entirely, forming directly in the minds of every human present. Elena felt the familiar sensation of Panther telepathy, but amplified beyond anything she had experienced before. We are the keepers of the deep paths, children of the first pack, guardians of the crystal songs that bind the scattered worlds. We greet the young species that calls itself human, noting with interest your capacity for growth beyond your apparent limitations. Admiral Harrison shifted uncomfortably beside Elena, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm before he caught himself. The direct mental contact clearly disturbed him, as it did several other members of the human delegation. Elena realized that the Panther's superior communication method was inadvertently creating the impression of mental invasion. Perhaps, Elena suggested quietly, we could establish communication protocols that feel more comfortable for both sides. The Panthers have developed translation technology that might bridge our linguistic differences without requiring direct neural contact. Small Seeker stepped forward, his mental voice carefully modulated to seem less intrusive. Alana who saves speaks wisdom. We have studied human languages through your broadcasts and understand your preference for audible communication. Observe. The nearest crystal spire began to resonate with musical tones that gradually resolved into recognizable words. The Panthers had developed a real-time translation system that converted their complex harmonic language into human speech, while simultaneously rendering human words into the emotional undertones that carried meaning for their species. Better? Small Seeker asked, his voice now coming through the crystal speakers with warmth and humor that transcended species barriers. We adapt our methods to suit our guests, as courtesy demands among civilized peoples. The gesture clearly impressed Ambassador Chen, who relaxed visibly as normal diplomatic protocols became possible. Thank you. This consideration speaks well of your people's commitment to peaceful relations. Perhaps we could begin with an exchange of basic information about our respective civilizations. What followed was a carefully choreographed dance of revelation that lasted hours. The humans shared their brief but dramatic history of space exploration, the challenges of unifying their homeworld, and their dreams of spreading life throughout the galaxy. The Panthers reciprocated with glimpses of their ancient civilization, the trauma of their species-wide diaspora, and their patient work to preserve knowledge and biodiversity across dozens of worlds. Elena found herself serving as an unofficial cultural interpreter, helping both sides understand concepts that didn't translate easily between their vastly different worldviews. The Panthers operated on timescales that spanned millennia, making decisions based on consequences that might not manifest for generations. Humans, by contrast, focused on immediate needs and rapid adaptation to changing circumstances. The breakthrough came when Dr. Chen, the behavioral specialist, asked about panther reproduction and child-rearing practices. The question was innocent enough, part of the standard xenobiological survey, but it triggered an emotional response that surprised everyone present. The ancient female's mental emanations suddenly blazed with intensity that made several humans stagger. You ask of cubs of the young ones who carry our future. Know then that every panther child is precious beyond measure to our people. We have seen worlds where our cubs were taken, studied, caged like specimens for alien amusement. This we will not permit again. Elena felt the temperature in the amphitheater drop as the assembled panthers focused their attention on the human delegation with predatory intensity. Admiral Harrison's hand moved to his weapon again, but Elena stepped between the two groups with desperate courage. That's exactly what we're trying to prevent, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation system. I've spent years learning about your people because I believe understanding prevents exploitation. We're here to build partnership, not to repeat the mistakes other species made. Small Seeker moved to stand beside Elena, his presence a powerful symbol of the bond that had brought these two species together. The debt bond speaks truth through Elena who saves. When I was drowning in the rushing water, she did not see a specimen to be studied or a resource to be exploited. She saw a life worth saving, and she acted without calculation of cost or benefit. The ancient female's mental emanations gradually calmed, but her amber eyes remained fixed on Admiral Harrison. Yet your war leader brings ships of destruction to our skies. Your governments speak of mining rights and resource extraction, while we reveal our most sacred places. How do we reconcile words of friendship with preparations for conquest? Admiral Harrison stepped forward, his military bearing somehow enhanced rather than diminished by the surreal circumstances. Honored Elder, I bring ships because protection of human colonists is my sworn duty. But Dr. Vasquez has shown me that strength can serve partnership as well as defense. If your people are willing to share your knowledge freely, then perhaps our ships can serve as guardians for both our civilizations. The offer clearly surprised the Panthers, who had expected territorial competition rather than mutual defense proposals. Elena watched Small Seeker exchange rapid harmonic communications with the other representatives, debate flowing in musical currents too complex for the translation system to follow. The young war leader speaks of sharing burdens as well as benefits. The ancient female finally responded. This is unexpected. Our experience with other species has taught us that those who possess superior weapons rarely offer protection to those they perceive as weaker. Elena seized the opening. That's because you haven't encountered humans before. We have a saying, no one gets left behind. It means we protect those who can't protect themselves, even at cost to ourselves. It's the same principle that drove me to save Small Seeker from drowning. The panthers fell silent for long moments, their crystalline spines pulsing in synchronized patterns that spoke of deep consultation with distant councils. Elena held her breath, knowing that this moment would determine whether first contact became the foundation for lasting alliance or the beginning of tragic misunderstanding. Finally, Small Seeker spoke for all the assembled representatives. We have debated across the quantum channels that connect our scattered peoples. The consensus emerges: humanity will be tested not through combat or competition, but through the greatest trial we can offer. We will share our knowledge freely, holding back nothing, and trust that your species will prove worthy of such gifts. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, his diplomatic training struggling to process the magnitude of what was being offered. And in return, what did the panthers ask of humanity? The ancient female's response carried the weight of millennia. Prove that sentient beings can grow beyond their origins. Show us that youth and wisdom can coexist, that power and compassion need not be enemies. Help us heal the wounds that isolation has left upon both our peoples. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she realized that one impulsive act of courage in a storm-swollen river had led to this moment. Two civilizations stood on the threshold of partnership that could transform both their destinies. The debt bond formed by saving one drowning cub had become the foundation for a new age of interstellar cooperation. 5 years after first contact, Elena stood in the observation deck of the research station that had become the hub of human-panther cooperation. The view had changed dramatically since that storm-swept day, when she pulled a drowning cub from the rushing water. The Crimson Valley now hosted a city unlike anything in human or panther architecture. A fusion of technologies that created living buildings capable of growth and adaptation. The joint medical facility where Elena worked had revolutionized healthcare for both species. Panther crystal song healing technology could repair injuries that human medicine considered irreversible, while human surgical precision helped panthers suffering from genetic defects that their biotechnology couldn't address. The partnership had saved thousands of lives and opened new frontiers in medical science. But the true miracle lay in what the Alliance had accomplished across the galaxy. The Panthers' hidden cities had emerged from their millennia of concealment, revealing a network of worlds dedicated to biological preservation and technological harmony. Human colonies previously struggling to survive in hostile environments now thrived with Panther environmental technology, while Panther settlements gained access to human agricultural techniques that dramatically improved their food security. Elena's personal transformation mirrored that of her species. The crystalline implant Small Seeker had given her during a formal ceremony had gradually integrated with her nervous system, granting her limited access to the quantum communication networks that connected Panther civilization. She could feel the emotional currents that flowed between Panther settlements, the collective joy and sorrow of a people no longer alone among the stars. Small Seeker himself had become something unprecedented in Panther society, a bridge builder whose influence extended across multiple worlds. His pack had grown to include not just panthers but humans, other rescued species, and even artificial intelligences that the panthers had helped achieve true consciousness. The debt bond that began with a drowning cub had evolved into a new form of civilization that neither species could have achieved alone. Elena. Dr. Chen's voice interrupted her thoughts as he approached with a data tablet displaying the latest reports from the frontier worlds. The Centauri colonies are requesting assistance with another terraforming project. It seems the Panther's atmospheric processors can handle the methane storms that have been plaguing the outer settlements. Elena accepted the tablet, scanning the technical specifications with eyes that had learned to see beyond simple human parameters. The partnership had taught her to think in terms of geological timescales and biological complexity that her original training had never addressed. I'll discuss it with the Deep Paths Council. They've been looking for opportunities to test their new ecosystem integration protocols. The mention of the Deep Paths Council would have seemed impossible just 5 years earlier. The Panther's governing body, which had operated in hidden isolation for millennia, now included human representatives who had learned to communicate through harmonic translation. Elena served as one of 3 human counselors, a responsibility she had never sought but couldn't abandon. Admiral Harrison appeared in the observation deck doorway, his uniform bearing the insignia of the new Interspecies Defense Force. The former Earth Fleet commander had undergone his own transformation, learning to coordinate military operations that involved both human technology and Panther quantum manipulation capabilities. Elena, we've received a priority message from the frontier sectors. The Kepler colonies have detected something that's got everyone concerned. Elena felt a familiar chill. The partnership between humans and Panthers had not gone unnoticed by other galactic civilizations. Some had approached with offers of their own alliances, but others had responded with suspicion and hostility. The rapid technological advancement of the Human-Panther alliance had upset established power balances across several sectors. What kind of something? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Ships, Admiral Harrison replied grimly. Large ones using technology that doesn't match any known species in our database. They're maintaining position at the edge of the Kepler system, not responding to communication attempts, but definitely conducting detailed scans of our colonies. Elena's crystalline implant pulsed with activity as Small Seeker's consciousness touched hers across the quantum networks. His mental voice carried undertones of ancient memory and deep concern. The silence moves again, pack friend. The enemy that scattered my people across the stars has found us once more. The revelation sent ice through Elena's veins. The Panthers had spoken little of the mysterious enemy that had forced their diaspora, but what they had shared painted a picture of a civilization that viewed biological diversity as a threat to be eliminated. The Silence, as the Panthers called them, had spent millennia systematically destroying worlds that harbored complex ecosystems, believing that only sterile uniformity could bring true peace to the galaxy. How long do we have? Elena asked, both Admiral Harrison and Small Seeker simultaneously. Unknown, came Harrison's tactical assessment. The ships aren't moving toward our colonies, but they're clearly gathering intelligence. Best estimate is weeks rather than months before they make their intentions clear. Small Seeker's response carried the weight of racial memory. The Silence does not move hastily. They will study their target thoroughly, learning its weaknesses before striking. But when they attack, they bring overwhelming force designed to eliminate all resistance in a single campaign. Elena closed her eyes and reached out through the quantum networks, feeling the responses from Panther settlements across dozens of worlds. Fear, yes, but also something else. For the first time in millennia, the scattered packs would face their ancient enemy not as refugees hiding in isolation, but as partners in a growing alliance that included the most adaptable species they had ever encountered. Then we prepare, Elena said, her voice carrying the authority she had learned in 5 years of interspecies diplomacy. But we don't prepare for defeat. We prepare to show the galaxy what partnership can accomplish when sentient beings choose cooperation over conquest. Admiral Harrison nodded grimly. The Defense Force has been developing new tactical doctrines that combine human strategic thinking with Panther biotechnology. We've got weapons and defenses that no one has ever seen before. Small Seeker's mental emanations blazed with something Elena had never felt from him before. Hope. The debt bond grows stronger with each challenge faced together. Elena, who saves, rescued more than a drowning cub that day. She rescued the future itself. Elena watched the twin suns of Kithra 7 set over the crystalline city that had grown in the Crimson Valley, a monument to what two utterly different species could accomplish when they chose trust over fear. Somewhere beyond those suns, an ancient enemy was gathering its forces for another campaign of extinction. But this time, the Silence would face not scattered refugees hiding in isolation, but a growing alliance of species united by bonds stronger than any weapon. The young woman who had once risked everything to save a drowning panther cub had become the architect of a new age. The debt bond formed in that storm-swollen river would soon be tested in the fires of interstellar war. But Elena faced the coming conflict with confidence born of 5 years of miracles. She had learned that the greatest treasures in the universe were not rare minerals or advanced technologies, but the connections that could form between different forms of consciousness when they chose to see beyond their differences. The Panther's gratitude had transformed not just her own life, but the destiny of both their civilizations. As the first stars appeared in Kithara 7's evening sky, Elena began composing messages to be sent along the quantum networks that now connected hundreds of worlds. The Silence might believe that uniformity brought peace, but they were about to discover the awesome power of unity, built from diversity. The debt bond would not be broken, and its echoes would ring across the galaxy.